welcome to Quilty. I'm your host, Mary Fons. Quilty is for those of you out there who want to make a beautiful quilt, but maybe have never even looked at a sewing machine before. We're going to take you through how to do all that. On today's program called Cut It Out, my friend Chloe is going to join me to talk about rotary cutters. Chloe, welcome to Quilty.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. I'm glad to have you, and I wanted to have you on the show because the other day we had lunch, and I was asking you about your quilts. When did you get started quilting?
Well, I made my first quilt just about a year ago. It was a baby quilt for a friend who had a newborn baby, and
Good idea.
I don't know anything about quilting, and I still don't know anything about quilting, but I just made a little baby quilt.
And it's gorgeous. I saw pictures, and you recently made a quilt for your brother.
Yeah, a slightly larger one, which had a little bit more of a pattern, but still, I really haven't read any books, and I'm kind of figuring it out as I go along.
It's amazing. She's doing it all, like teaching herself. You're self-taught. And so when we were talking about your latest quilt, you were telling me that you cut out all the pieces in your quilt
by hand,
right?
By hand with scissors.
You use
like
scissors like those, and I was sort of like totally impressed and a little like horrified. It's not the word, but I was like, wow, that must have taken forever, right? It took a long time.
It did, but I didn't know that there was any other way to do it.
Exactly. There is another way, and it is the rotary cutting way. So today, you're going to learn, hopefully along with the people watching at home, how to use a rotary cutter.
Great.
This is a rotary cutter. I'm going to put it down. That's got my name on it, because when you take quilting classes, you want to put your name on your rotary cutters. It's basically a razor blade on a wheel. So this blade retracts and expands and contracts, with the pull of the trigger. Yeah, it's really cool. So it's this razor blade on a wheel, and the way that it works cutting through fabric is so brilliant, and it's kind of a whole cutting system. Just real quick, this is another style of rotary cutter where you click the blade back like this, and then you cut, and then whenever you're done cutting, and we'll talk more about safety, you always close the blade up, because it's a razor blade on a wheel. It can be very dangerous. But it makes cutting so much faster. So the rotary cutter by itself isn't too useful. Just having this tool isn't quite enough. I was telling you earlier, you need three things. You need the mat, the rotary cutting mat, and the rotary cutting ruler. Okay, and this is like your straight edge, and with the mat and the ruler you have this awesome grid system that you can use to measure out the exact piece of the fabric that you want to cut. And I'm gonna, it's
really tough.
It's really tough. It's a tough mat. You can cut through it. If you rotary cut like on your dining room table, you would be so sad. You don't want to do that, so you definitely have to have a mat. So take this piece of fabric there and put it out there on the mat. You can move those scissors away. That bright chipper fabric, it's very yellow, isn't it nice? Variegated. You get a lot of bang for your buck in a piece of fabric like that because you've got all these different shades in one. So what you want to do when you cut, like say you're cutting these little pieces, and were there pieces this small in the quilt that you made? Or?
I did have some scraps that were this small, and they're very difficult to work with.
They are tiny. Exactly, and when you're cutting them by hand, like say you need a ton, I mean that's going to take a long time. So, isn't that cool? That fabric was designed by the guy who won Project Runway the first season, Jay. He makes quilt fabric. You didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
Super cute. So if you want to cut these little squares, you say they're 2 inch by 2 inch. Those are 2 inch squares. And on your rotary cutting mat, you have these awesome cubes, and those represent an inch. So you know that that's 2 inches by 2 inches, okay? So the best way to do it with a rotary cutter is to cut strips, 2 inch strips, and then cut those into your squares. So the first thing we want to do is put our fabric out, and we always iron it. So we pressed it flat and nice. And you take your rotary cutter. Do you want to use, how about you use that one? Okay. And you put your ruler here on your rotary mat, your cutting mat.
Like that?
Exactly, just like that. And you line it up so you've got your straight edges. You've got all these lines on your mat, and they line up with the lines on your ruler. And this is your straight edge to cut against. The rotary cutting ruler and the rotary cutter were born together. It is a marriage made in heaven. When you're cutting, especially for the first time, you want to wear a glove. Okay. We call it the klutz glove. Keeps safe, so you put it on the one you're not cutting with, the hand that you're not cutting with. Exactly. That will keep anything crazy from happening. And my sister, totally, when she was a kid, Mom said don't use the rotary cutter. She did. There was a hospital trip. That's all I'm saying. It can be very dramatic. So, so you put your hand down, right, on your ruler. And I'm going to come around the other side just to make sure everything's going to plan. And if you want to cut a 2 inch, right, so you line up your, on your line, and you make your cut. And you put your muscle behind it and line up your blade right along the edge of the ruler and just give a straight cut.
And it's okay to cut through 2 layers like this?
Good question. That's a great question. Yes, it's okay to cut through 2 layers. 2 is going to give you double your bang for your buck, because you're going to get double the amount of pieces when you cut. I wouldn't go any more over 4, especially when you're new. Some people can whack through 8 layers of fabric, but I don't recommend it, especially in the beginning. Okay. But that's a great question. That's 2 layers of fabric there. Okay, so line up your blade with your ruler.
Okay.
And keep it right alongside. This is the first time. It's very dramatic. I know she's going to do great.
It's the first time I've picked up a rotary cutter. It's very exciting. Okay.
So, and then you just do a firm push.
With commitment.
Exactly. Now I think she did it. Beautifully.
Good.
Look at that. She did it for the first time. Beautiful.
Thank you.
That was so great. Oh my gosh. I'm kind of all misty now. I mean, that was really beautiful. Okay, so now you want 2-inch strips, right? So you're going to move your ruler over. You got this beautiful straight edge. You're going to take that away. And you move it over 2 inches, right? You got your 2 cubes. You know it's 2 inches. You line it up, you line it down, and give that another cut.
Okay.
Beautiful. See how you did. Oh, gorgeous. See, this is, and look how fast that was. And that's you're more than halfway there. So you're going to flip it over. Since you want 2-inch squares, you're going to line up. You got 2, just like that. And give that a cut. And you got your squares. Wow. Just like that, you got 2 of them. If you had stacked 4, you'd have 4 squares now. So quick and so easy. Does it make sense to you? Any questions?
It totally does. No, it's amazing how beautiful the edge is too.
It's really hard to get that with it.
Yeah,
Scissors.
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
So you did a wonderful job. That's how easy rotary cutting can be. And I'm making this really cool. If you could grab that pattern there. I'm making this quilt next. If we can get a shot of that. This is a pattern by Blue Underground. It's called the Curved Log Cabin. And my vision for this quilt is to put really dark slate gray in this in the contrasting colors and do it all in these yellows. And when you look at this is a perfect project to show for rotary cutting, because this is like not even half of the strips that I need for this quilt, and we are going to to do this by hand would take forever. Rotary cutting cutting took me a couple hours, and I had this whole quilt cut out. So I recommend using a rotary cutter for your next project. To thank you for being on the show today on Quilty, I'm going to give you a subscription to my mom's magazine, Love of Quilting with Fons and Porter. There's a little issue to get you started. That was, I couldn't have asked for more, Chloe. You did it perfectly the first time. You showed how easy rotary cutting really can be.
Thank you so much. That was so easy and helpful, and the lines are so nice and clean.
It's a whole new world, Chloe. Thanks for being on the show. If you want to learn more about rotary cutting, quilting, anything you saw today on Quilty or any episode, go to qnntv.com/quilty, and you can email me too at quilty@qnntv.com. Ask me anything. I will try to answer your questions. Thanks.